turnaround information. So I think it's interesting on a personal level, Steve, about the rapid turnaround and for the live stream. But so Richard kind of addressed ahead of the gun here a little bit about for companies level. But how does Angela see it for HP, and how does Michael see it for Intel about looking at live stream and how that applies to a corporate level?
I think Michael will have a different take on it than I will, because we have different approaches based on, I think, what we do. But I think what struck me, and I was just taking some notes here, is that the takeaway, I think, from those two stories there, and there'll be another takeaway after Michael, is that if the experts are looking for a way to lower the bar, right? If the experts are looking for a way to lower the bar when it comes to what are the right tools for frequency, for the audience that you're trying to reach, for the depth of the content that you're trying to share, or what you're trying to do to energize, depending on your community and your relationships, or the access. If the experts are trying to lower the bar and they do this full time all day long, you know, what's your audience trying to do? So I think the takeaway from that means that it just varies depending on the message or the audience, and then I think it also changes over time, because if you look at what was possible 5 years ago, it's an entirely different world today. If you look at the top 10 websites from even 4 years ago, I think there's one social network in it. Worldwide, I'm talking about. You just go over to Alexa, take a look. Right now, 5 of the top 10 websites are social networking. I mean, they all have some kind of social aspect to it. So I just think you have to be, it's an exercise in iteration. It's an exercise in understanding and being willing to change. You have to be willing to go out there and roll with it. That it's okay to experiment. But
and that's actually the reason why I went out and did this, and why I abandoned a blog with, that was out here 5 years, I had 5,000 pages and a page rank of 7, because it just was, I have to be at the edge to be able to advise folks like you on when that stuff becomes mainstream.
Right, so if Steve can walk away from a blog that has that kind of audience and readership in order to do what works better.
Well,
I mean, that's an
experiment, yeah.
But yeah, it's an experiment, but yeah. It's just like, okay, but you can do that, and that's a great commentary on what social is.
You know, I find it interesting how we're talking about tools first, because in my mind, and this is a conversation we have all the time at Intel, excuse me, you know, we often talk about what's the Twitter strategy, what's the friend feed strategy, what's the community strategy. And I think what works today is not necessarily going to work tomorrow. And personally, I'm a new user of Postgres, and I love it, and it's like all things about me other than social media. So it's like family, politics, sports, things like that. My point is that from a business perspective, if our users, or if the people that we're trying to interact with are in Twitter, which they are right now, well, we want to make sure that we're inundated within that community. If they're in Postgres, or FriendFeed, or Facebook, or Orkut, which is a social network in Brazil and India, well then we want some level of presence there. And so I think from our perspective, is understanding, number one, is who are we trying to reach? And number two is, where do they actually hang out? So as Richard said, fish where the fish are. If you think like Facebook Connect, right? Now, you know, Facebook is becoming a new browser. Have you ever clicked on a link in Facebook? You stay within Facebook. It's going everywhere. And it's the way they're going to monetize Facebook. The point is, with Facebook Connect and the ability for people to take their social networks with them, it's going to be very interesting how companies like HP, like eBay, and even Intel, how we kind of respond to that. Because it's going to open the doors to a lot more possibility and a lot more opportunity to interact with consumers. So from a tools perspective, you know, quite honestly, I really don't care. Because if you look at like Forrester and the post method, and that's something that we at Intel, we kind of live and die by Forrester, and like the technographic profile and the ladder of participation. Well, we know that first is understanding the people and where they fall on that technographic profile, how they behave, how they interact within social media. Number two is objectives. Is it a listening model like Comcast or Dell, or is it a talking model? Is it an energize, whatever it is. And then T, and the very last one is tools. Then you figure out, okay, once you understand those 3 steps, the last one is your tool. And the tools are going to change. And I often give people dirty looks at work when they want to meet about and have a meeting about another meeting, and then 2 meetings things later, it's like, what's the Twitter strategy? Well, I'm figuring, you know, we do need some guidelines. We don't want to just have people running wild, but we don't want to spend all of our time defining a strategy for a tool. And that's my opinion. That's not the opinion of any company.